Well, my story, I learned a lot of lessons in the late 90s. I basically had to start over. You find people that's been in this business, in the construction and all long enough, and you go through that sometimes. But at the same time, Donald Trump started over and all these people, we were all hit. And I learned a lot of things to do and not to do. So when 2008 hit, I was in a position, I had my rentals. We were building houses, but we were able to pull back. During that time, I wouldn't say we were making money. It was all about damage control. But here where I live, probably most of the builders, all but about four or five went out of business. But I was able to come through it pretty, I don't want to say unhurt, but we were okay. We just wasn't making money, but we were surviving. But I like to tell everybody, go back. I used 1973 when I come out of high school. When I come out of high school, we had a gas embargo and we had a recession. I mean, you'd have to go to the gas pumps and hope you could get gas. There'd be lines. So I look at how many we've had since then. It's been several. I think it's about five. And of course, 2008 was the worst. That's why they call it the Great Recession. They'd have called it the Great Depression if it hadn't already been one. I mean, if you were in the real estate, construction, auto industry, whatever, it was tough.
Yeah.
And I tell people to not get overextended, be diversified. What can happen? You can go bed tonight and tomorrow it's like the water was cut off. It changes. It's just that. And even if if you've got property that was paid for, the banks wouldn't refinance it. I mean, they were in damage control. And they wasn't even going after people who wasn't paying. They were going after people who paid the bills. I mean, they're trying to renegotiate because values were dropping. Like right before 2008, I'd bought $1.4 million worth of lots, in a subdivision, me and another guy. And all of a sudden, the lots went down from being worth 40-something thousand to about 20-something. The banks coming in wanting you to give them $200,000, readjust your notes. Because see what happens is, when you loan out money, the banks loan out money. If they loan out $1, they got to keep so many dollars in reserve.
Mm-hmm.
And if they loan it out on property that's worth $500,000, all of a sudden it's worth 300,000. They had to have more in reserve. So the feds were breathing down the bank's necks, and it was, I tell folks, it was like the Wild West at that time. It was something.
And it's almost, from my understanding, and I love talking to, experienced people like yourself who've been through it, and they're talking from experience rather than out of some book they read or whatever. But, basically, the well dried up, right? I mean, the spouts turned off. You could, like you said, you couldn't even refinance cash paid properties. And for people, right. And, leveraging is great way. Obviously, you leverage some of your properties, right? And it's a great way to grow. But at the same time, if you don't have the discipline to keep reserves for yourself and keep, liquid assets, I mean, in tough times like that, you're not going to get it from a bank, from my understanding.
Yeah, they're not going, and, they just quit loaning. And, you ever seen the movie The Big Short? I'm sure you have. See, at that time, I can't talk about it much because I'm under a gag order, but I had a bond issue and I did a swap. And that's what that was about, And all of a sudden the bank's telling you, hey, you don't have, you do a bond issue works, you would pay interest quarterly and principal once a year. And the swap, you come in and pay money to get a fixed rate. So I had like a fixed rate for 5 years. Well, they come in all of a sudden and say, well, your rate's not fixed. Well, that's what was sold to me for, So, because the banks had never had it to come up. They never, it was like they were selling a product and all of a sudden it changed and they didn't know how to deal with things. I mean, there's never been a time where banking was so, I mean, I was president of our Home Builders Association in 2009, which, man, that's a rough time to be president right in the middle of it. And I was telling them at our awards banquet, I said, look around, how many bankers you see? We had one banker there. Usually the bankers are there, patting you on the back and wanting to loan you money, but they were all running and hiding because they were putting people out of business. The builders there was a lot of, anger and hostility, and of course they're trying to survive and keep their jobs, So it was, wasn't nothing fun about it. I can tell you that. But it was a tough time, and we, like I said, we were fortunate enough to be able to pull back because of our rentals. And we actually, during that time, my son, I could live off my rentals, but we're talking 11 years ago, so I wasn't at a position that I am now with my rentals. So I had a daughter-in-law that had just finished University of Alabama in interior design, couldn't find a job. My son, he was running the new construction, so we wasn't building. So we opened up an interior and antique shop, and we were buying furniture and flipping furniture. Did that for 4 years, and I really enjoyed it.